Fear, guilt, and shame are often the biggest obstacles that can keep you stuck and second guessing and just afraid to move forward. I know because I've been there. I face them on my own journey and I know how overwhelming they can be, but I also know that they aren't permanent roadblocks and they're just obstacles that you can work through. And that's what I'm here to help you do. So, in this video, I'm going to break down each of these big obstacles and, more importantly, share with you how you can start overcoming them today. Let's start with fear. Fear is there with really any change that you're going to go through. And fear is often the cause of so many other mental blocks. You can have, fear of failure, fear of regret, fear of rejection, just fear of change in general. And fear is also what often causes all those negative what if thoughts that are going through your mind. What if people don't like me? What if this is a big mistake? What if I regret this? What if I fail? All of those negative what if thoughts that can keep you second guessing and keep you stuck and keep you wondering, should I really show up as my true self or should I just keep hiding these aspects about me and hiding who I really am because, I don't know what's going to happen once people know the real me. But that then typically leads to an inner turmoil because if you're here watching this, it's probably because you've realized that keeping your true self hidden is causing probably mental and emotional and even physical issues in your life because you're feeling like you just can't keep hiding who you really are. So you kind of end up in this inner turmoil. And a lot of times, fear is the driving factor behind that. So, fear exists to try and keep you safe. It thinks that it's keeping you safe by keeping you in a situation or in a place where it knows what to expect. Fear likes what it knows, and the unknown feels really risky and really scary because you don't know what to expect. You don't know what the outcome is going to be. You don't know how people are going to react. And so it's a lot easier to stay where things are predictable and you know what to expect. But again, that's fear. And here's the truth with that too: growth really only happens outside your comfort zone. In order to really move through this, you have to face that fear and move outside your comfort zone so that you can fully grow and live as your true self. So, here are some ways that you can start working to overcome your fear. All of those negative what if thoughts that I talked about. For every negative what if thought that you have, there's actually a positive what if thought. Okay. So, what you can do is anytime you're noticing yourself maybe spiraling or having some of those negative what if thoughts, replace it with a positive one. For example, what if I fail? You can replace that with what if I succeed? Or what if I regret this? To what if this is the best decision and best thing that I ever do? Or what if people don't like me or accept me? To what if I have the best relationships and friendships and interactions that I've ever had in my entire life because people are getting to know the real me? So think about all those positive what ifs. I mean, how would those feel to have that? And I can tell you that from personal experience, those positive things are possible and what I've gotten to experience myself. So while I know it's really scary, it can feel really overwhelming. Those positive things are absolutely possible and are most often the outcomes when you do face your fear and step into living as your true self. Now, the next thing that you can do is to start to take some small actions forward. And small actions that just push you slightly out of your comfort zone. They don't have to be really big, scary, overwhelming. I know that the thought and idea of just fully embracing and living as your true self could sound really scary in certain circumstances. For me, especially if it involves like a big decision for me, like where I had to get divorced, that was a really big thing to do. But maybe you need to start smaller and slowly work up to, a bigger shift that's maybe needed. So, for example, in my own life, when I was going through this, my personal journey revolves a lot around my sexuality, which yours may not, but this is just an example. So, when I was first coming out, I started coming out to close friends, just people that I felt kind of had maybe an idea about this anyway. Maybe I kind of said things. And, some of my friends, I had even said that I was bi. And so I knew that if I was like, well, actually, I realized I was a lesbian, that they probably weren't going to be real surprised. So I started telling some of those friends first because I knew it was a safe way, but it was still pushing me slightly outside my comfort zone because I was expressing and saying my true sexuality out loud to people. And the more I did this, the more strength it gave me and sort of encouragement to do the scarier thing, which was to come out to my family, which I had a Catholic conservative family. And I was terrified to come out to them because, again, fear. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what reaction they might have. I didn't know if they were still going to love and accept me and embrace me and if things were going to be okay. I had all of that fear. But taking those small actions finally led up to being able to take that bigger action of coming out to my family. And spoiler alert, or you may know this, but it was all fine. My fear was trying to keep me safe, but in the end, it was all fine. And, everything worked out and it really wasn't as bad or as scary as it felt like it was. And also, taking action is the third pillar of my real framework for living as your authentic self. And if you haven't checked that out yet, you can download a copy for yourself for free with a link below this video. So that can also give you some additional support and guidance as you're working through this journey of being your authentic self. Now, the next obstacle that most people face is guilt, feeling guilty for being your true self. And this can happen especially if maybe being your true self is potentially going to affect other people. So, for example, again, for me in my situation, my sexuality and choosing to get divorced clearly affected my ex husband and my son and even my family because my family had grown to know and love and care for my ex-husband and see us as this little family of three and was used to having us all around and my ex-husband around at family gatherings. And so by me coming out and being my true self and choosing to get divorced and break apart that family essentially, it affected other people. So I felt guilty for that. I felt responsible, like it was my fault that this was happening. And even with being an entrepreneur now and pursuing, a job and a role as an online entrepreneur and helping other people, I've even felt some guilt about that because my mom was the person that helped really pay for most of my college to go to school as an occupational therapist. And while being an OT does help with what I'm doing with coaching people and using holistic practice to live authentically. It's not working specifically as an OT. And so I've kind of had some guilt around that because my mom paid for me to do this and now I'm shifting to do something else. So with all of that and sharing that, if you're kind of experiencing some of these same feelings, something you can do to start overcoming your guilt, this is something that I did too, is first start with maybe writing down the things that you're feeling guilty for. Okay. For each thing that you're feeling guilty for, ask yourself this: am I feeling guilty because I'm actually doing something wrong? Or am I feeling guilty because someone or something outside of me is sort of influencing me to feel guilty about it? Okay, so go with me on this. For me, the things that I was feeling guilty about, getting divorced or being an entrepreneur, things like that, I've asked myself, am I feeling guilty because I'm actually doing something wrong? Is it really wrong to get divorced because of my sexuality or to be an entrepreneur because this is what I feel driven to do? And when I look at it that way, no, like I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm just doing what feels right for me and what I need to do for my own well being. And so there's nothing about that that I should feel guilty for. I'm not intentionally harming people. I'm not being deceitful. I'm not doing things that would be classified really is wrong. But some people on the outside can view divorce as wrong. And that's the thing too about being your authentic self. How do you view those things? In this situation, I don't view getting divorced because I've realized my true sexuality as being wrong. So figuring out sort of your morals and values and asking, is this wrong? You know, and see what your answers are. Are you actually doing something wrong, or is it just because someone on the outside is trying to guilt you into it and make you feel like you are? And the third obstacle is shame. It's really common to feel bad about yourself for being your authentic self when being your real self possibly involves something that is outside what most people might consider the norm, or even what you were taught to believe is the norm of things. So you can feel unworthy or unlovable, or like you shouldn't be who you truly are, or like who you truly are is wrong in some way. But again, a lot of times societal norms and cultural norms, religious norms, upbringing, outside influences that are telling you you need to be a certain way, act a certain way, do things a certain way, believe things a certain way. And if you go against that, you can feel shame, like there's something wrong with you. Now, here's kind of an example for me is, like I mentioned, I was raised with a conservative Catholic family and was raised to be this good girl, do the right thing. And when I was going through my own journey with all of this, I ended up finding myself feeling like, I knew I was still a good person. I knew I was doing good things. I knew I cared deeply about people. I knew that I was making smart choices and that I was actually considering other people's feelings and all of that. And but I still felt like, to my mom, that I was probably a disappointment. I because I felt like I didn't grow up and turn out the way she wanted me to be. She wanted me to be this good Catholic woman, married to probably a Catholic man and going to church every Sundays. And that just wasn't me. For me personally, too, I realized that I'm not religious. I just fall under a more spiritual area of belief, and I no longer practice the Catholic faith. And even my ex-husband that I married wasn't a Catholic man, and then we got divorced and I came out as a lesbian. And so all of these things made me feel like I was a disappointment because I didn't turn out the way that I thought she wanted me to. So there's a few years back, especially when I was going through all of this, that I ended up sharing this with my mom. My mom actually has always been really great and been there for me and still made me feel loved, but I still had these feelings of just being this disappointment. So I shared this. And again, thankfully, I have a really great mom who looked at me and said, "Well, yeah, those are things that I did want for you. But, she said, you are your own person. You need to be you. You can't be someone else, anyone else, anything else, just because someone else might want you to be that way." And so this was really validating. I was very, very thankful to my mom for sharing this with me, but she's so right. So if you're struggling with shame, take this message from my mom and from me, that you are worthy and you are allowed and you need to be your own person. You shouldn't be anyone else that anyone else on the outside or anything else on the outside wants you to be, because you are you and you deserve to be you. Okay? So take that message, but something else that you can do to also start working through any feelings of shame that you may be having are to also look back and reflect on, where is that shame coming from? Is there some type of outside influence, a belief that you were raised with, or a message that you heard growing up or from society that, is causing you to feel like you are unworthy in some way? And, reflect on that. Is your shame warranted because, like, that's genuinely how you feel, or is it coming from an outside influence? Okay, and that can kind of help you differentiate your authentic self and stepping into embracing who you really are, and kind of letting go any outside influence that may be telling you that's not who you should be, or it's not okay to be that person. Okay, the other thing that you can do is write out those good qualities about yourself. We all have good qualities. Write out the things that you're proud of. Write out the things that you're good at. Write out, the person that you want to be, and think about, how does it feel thinking about being that person and embracing who I am. And anytime that you're starting to feel shame, refer back to that, because it can help kind of realign you and to know, like, I am this good person. I have these great things about me, and I deserve to be who I am. Now, as I mentioned before, you may be struggling with other blocks as you're working through this. Things like perfectionism or imposter syndrome, or feeling alone or like you don't have support. But for the most part, all of the blocks kind of still come back to these three main ones of fear, guilt, and shame. And I want you to know that you're not alone. Plus, I want you to know that every step forward, no matter how small, does still bring you closer to living the life that you truly want and being the real you. And if you need some more guidance with this, I'm actually going to share another powerful mindset shift that you can use to help overcome these obstacles. And this is the Mel Robbins Let Them theory. I'm going to break this down in this video here if you want to watch, or if you are interested in working directly with me through this, check the link below this video.